at Sublesse and Pot-Plouf de Lapin PM, 72 floors above the Chicago River. Evelyn Hart stood in front of a blood-stained ledger, while the most feared man in the city locked the penthouse door behind her and said, "Someone inside my family moved $8 million under my name, and by midnight, the FBI will believe you helped me do it." For one suspended second, Evelyn could hear nothing but the rain striking the glass walls and the violent beating of her own heart. Luca Moretti stood between her and the only exit, broad-shouldered and unnervingly still in a black suit darkened by the storm. A thin line of blood ran from his scarred knuckles onto the white cuff of his shirt. His rough, handsome face revealed no panic, but his dark eyes held the cold focus of a man who had already calculated every possible outcome and disliked all of them. On the desk between them lay pages filled with coded transfers, hidden accounts, and signatures that could destroy both their lives. Evelyn looked from the ledger to the man she had kissed only 12 hours earlier and understood that the worst decision of her life had not been the kiss. It had been believing she could walk away afterward. 12 hours earlier, it had begun with one cruel dare. The Velvet Room occupied the top floor of a restored hotel in Chicago's Gold Coast, a place where the chandeliers glowed like captured fire and a single bottle of whiskey cost more than Evelyn's first car. It was supposed to be her 33rd birthday celebration, although most of the guests belonged to Vanessa Cole's world rather than hers. They were polished women with inherited money, private trainers, and the effortless confidence of people who had never been told they were lucky anyone found them attractive. Evelyn sat among them in a deep sapphire wrap dress that followed the soft fullness of her body instead of hiding it. She was a beautiful, chubby woman with warm, fair skin, a softly rounded face, expressive hazel eyes, and long, dark auburn hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. She knew the dress looked good. She had chosen it because it made her feel elegant, feminine, and impossible to overlook. Yet the longer the evening continued, the more she felt like an invited comparison rather than an honored guest. "You look amazing," one woman had told her earlier, pausing just long enough before adding, "I wish I had your confidence." Evelyn knew that tone. It turned a compliment into a question. How dare a woman your size believe she deserves to be seen? She had smiled anyway, because she had spent years learning that dignity was often the cleanest form of revenge. Across the table, Vanessa lifted another glass of champagne and studied Evelyn with the bright, reckless expression that usually appeared just before she said something cruel and called it honesty. Vanessa was beautiful in a sharp, expensive way, with sleek blonde hair, a silver dress, and the social ease of someone who could turn any room into an audience. They had known each other since college. For years, Vanessa had described Evelyn as her most loyal friend. Evelyn had slowly begun to suspect that Vanessa meant safest. "You have barely touched your drink," Vanessa said. "It's your birthday. Try acting like you're alive." Evelyn rotated the lime in her sparkling water. "I am alive. I just don't need a hangover to prove it." Several women laughed. Vanessa did not. "That's always your answer. You're responsible. You're careful. You're too busy making partner and paying your mortgage and pretending none of this matters." "None of what matters?" Evelyn asked, although she already knew. Vanessa leaned forward, being wanted. The conversation around the table softened. Evelyn felt the attention shift toward her. "I don't measure my life by male attention," she said. "No," Vanessa replied, smiling thinly. "You avoid it before it can reject you." The words landed harder than Evelyn wanted anyone to see. She kept her expression calm. "You've had too much champagne." "Maybe, but I'm not wrong." Vanessa's eyes moved deliberately over Evelyn's dress. "You hide behind your job. You hide behind being the smart one. And then you tell yourself men are intimidated by your standards when really you're terrified they'll see your body and decide you're the funny friend instead of the woman they want." A hot, familiar shame moved through Evelyn, followed quickly by anger. She had endured strangers offering unsolicited diet advice, dates who treated attraction to her like a secret confession, and colleagues who assumed confidence must be compensation for insecurity. But hearing the same cruelty from someone she had trusted made it feel sharper. "I don't hide," Evelyn said quietly. I refuse to audition for people who have already decided what I'm worth. Something flickered in Vanessa's face, almost resentment. Then she leaned back and pointed toward the private corner booth across the room. Prove it. Evelyn followed her gaze. The man in the booth did not belong to the room so much as command it. He sat alone at the center of a curved leather seat while two large men in dark suits stood several feet behind him. He appeared to be in his early 40s, tall even while seated, with powerful shoulders beneath a perfectly cut charcoal jacket. His black hair was slightly tousled, as though elegance had been forced onto something naturally untamed. Light stubble shadowed a hard jaw, and a faint scar cut through one eyebrow. His hands were large, rough, and marked across the knuckles. Everything about him suggested expensive control wrapped around old violence. He was not speaking. He was watching. The entire room seemed to understand that disturbing him would be a mistake. Absolutely not, Evelyn said. Vanessa smiled. I dare you to walk over there and kiss him. One of the women laughed nervously. Another whispered that he looked dangerous. Vanessa lifted her phone from the table, pretending to check the screen. Just one kiss. Unless I'm right. Evelyn should have walked away. She should have collected her coat, called a car, and ended a friendship that had become too poisonous to survive. Instead, she heard the quiet laughter around the table. She saw the satisfaction in Vanessa's eyes, and for one reckless moment, Evelyn became tired of always being the most reasonable person in the room. She stood, smoothed the sapphire fabric over her hips, and said, "Hold my purse." The laughter stopped. Every step across the lounge seemed louder than the music. Evelyn felt eyes following her, but the stranger's gaze was the only one that mattered. As she approached, the two men behind him moved instantly, their hands disappearing beneath their jackets. The seated man raised two fingers. They stopped. Evelyn came to a halt in front of him. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His eyes were nearly black, his expression unreadable, his presence rougher than the polished men who filled the room. He smelled faintly of cedar, smoke, and rain. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was low and textured, more dangerous because he did not need to raise it. Evelyn swallowed. This is going to sound ridiculous. One corner of his mouth shifted, not quite a smile. Most interesting things do. She glanced back at Vanessa, who was now holding her phone upright. Something about that should have warned her. "My friend gave me a dare," Evelyn said. The man followed her glance, then returned his attention to her. "And what did she dare you to do?" "Kiss the most intimidating man in the room." His gaze moved slowly over her face, but there was no mockery in it, no surprise that a woman with her body had approached him. There was only heat and a strange, controlled curiosity. "Did she choose me?" he asked. "Or did you?" Evelyn's breath caught. "She did." He leaned back slightly. "Then you owe me nothing." The answer unsettled her, more than arrogance would have. She had expected amusement, rejection, perhaps cruelty. Instead, he had handed the decision back to her. Evelyn became suddenly aware of Vanessa recording, of the women waiting to laugh, and of the old wound inside her that had spent years trying to prove she could not be humiliated. The stranger lifted one hand and rested it lightly at her waist, not pulling her closer, merely letting her feel the strength he was deliberately restraining. His thumb rested against the fabric of her dress. "Is this still their dare?" he asked softly. "Or is it your decision now?" Evelyn looked directly into his dark eyes. The room seemed to fall away. "Mine," she whispered. Then she bent and kissed him. She expected a brief contact, enough to end the game. Instead, the moment her lips touched his, something inside her shifted. His hand tightened slightly at her waist, steadying rather than trapping her. He gave her one clear second to retreat. Evelyn did not. She placed her hand against his shoulder and kissed him again, deeper this time. His restraint broke with a quiet sound low in his chest. His other hand rose to the back of her neck, and the kiss became slow, intense, and consuming. He tasted like whiskey and danger. Evelyn felt the solid strength of him beneath her palm and the shocking tenderness in the way he held her, as though he understood exactly how powerful he was and had chosen not to use all of it. When they finally separated, The velvet room had gone silent. Evelyn's heart was pounding. The stranger's eyes remained fixed on her mouth. "What's your name?" he asked. Reality returned at once. Evelyn stepped back. That wasn't part of the dare. His expression darkened with interest. "I thought you said it was your decision." The kiss was. She forced herself to smile despite the trembling in her knees. "Everything else is still under review." She turned before he could answer and walked back across the lounge. Vanessa stared at her with open disbelief, the phone still in her hand. Evelyn snatched her purse from the table. "Delete the video." Vanessa lowered the phone too quickly. "I wasn't recording." Evelyn looked at her for a long moment. The lie was obvious, but the humiliation of arguing in front of everyone felt unbearable. "Happy birthday to me," she said, then left. Behind her, the stranger watched the door close. One of his men leaned down and murmured, "Do you want us to stop her, Mr. Moretti?" Luca Moretti continued staring at the place where Evelyn had disappeared. No. His gaze shifted toward Vanessa. The warmth left his face completely. "Find out who she is. Then find out why that woman was recording." By 9 the next morning, Evelyn had rebuilt the walls around herself. She entered the downtown offices of Hale, Mercer, and Rowe wearing a tailored charcoal suit, a cream silk blouse, and the expression of a woman who had never kissed a dangerous stranger in a crowded lounge. She told herself the memory would fade. It had been one reckless birthday mistake, nothing more. Richard Hale intercepted her before she reached her office. Her managing partner looked unusually pale. "Conference room. Now." "We landed Moretti Continental Logistics." Evelyn stopped. "The Moretti account?" "A full forensic review. Their board wants immediate clearance before a port acquisition. This could make you partner." Richard's smile was too eager. "You'll lead it." Evelyn should have felt triumph. Instead, an inexplicable unease tightened across her chest. "Why me?" "Because you're the best auditor in the firm." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "And because they specifically requested someone reliable." 10 minutes later, Evelyn entered the conference room carrying a leather portfolio and a cup of coffee she no longer wanted. Richard stood beside the windows, rehearsing his introduction under his breath. The double doors opened. 3 men walked in first, all broad-shouldered, silent, and alert. Then the stranger from the velvet room entered behind them. He wore a black suit and no tie. In daylight, the scar through his eyebrow was clearer, his rough hands more noticeable, and his authority somehow more frightening. Luca saw her and stopped. Recognition moved through his eyes, followed by a slow, unreadable satisfaction. Richard rushed forward. "Mr. Moretti, welcome. I'm Richard Hale, Senior Managing Partner. This is Evelyn Hart, our most reliable forensic auditor." Luca ignored Richard's offered hand. His gaze remained on Evelyn. "Reliable," he said, his voice carrying the memory of whiskey, rain, and a kiss she had failed to forget. "That isn't the word I would have chosen." Evelyn lifted her chin. "What happens outside this office has no relevance to the audit, Mr. Moretti." His eyes sharpened, clearly enjoying her refusal to retreat. "Of course." He moved around the table and stopped opposite her. "Then we will keep everything strictly professional." Richard exhaled with relief. Luca continued. "Miss Hart will conduct the review from my private office. Sensitive records will not leave the building. No assistants. No intermediaries." "Absolutely," Richard said immediately. "Whatever you require." Evelyn looked at her boss. He had agreed before she could object. Sweat glistened near his hairline. Luca noticed her noticing. 2 hours later, Evelyn sat alone in his penthouse office reviewing corporate payment records. She expected the accounts to be complex. She did not expect them to be careless. A construction subsidiary had transferred nearly $8 million through 3 shell companies before routing the funds into a private holding trust. The authorization carried Luca's encrypted digital signature. Evelyn checked the date twice. Then she searched a public news archive. On the night the transfer was approved, Luca had been photographed at a trade summit in Rome, surrounded by reporters and government officials. Unless he had signed the authorization from another continent through a restricted internal terminal, someone had stolen his credentials. Luca entered without knocking. "You found something." Evelyn turned the monitor toward him. Either you authorized an $8 million transfer while publicly attending a dinner in Rome, or someone inside your company can imitate your signature. His expression did not change, but the atmosphere in the room did. Who else has seen this? No one. Luca stepped closer. Keep it that way. Evelyn rose. I'm an independent auditor. You don't tell me what evidence to hide. I'm not asking you to hide it. His dark eyes held hers. I'm asking you to find the person using my name before they decide you know too much. A knock sounded at the outer door. One of Luca's assistants entered carrying a sealed cream envelope addressed to Evelyn. He said it had been delivered by courier without a return name. Evelyn opened it. Inside was a glossy photograph of her kissing Luca in the velvet room. Her stomach dropped. Across the back, written in black ink, were the words, "Sing the audit, or everyone will know how you earned the account." Evelyn slowly looked through the glass wall toward Luca. He stood motionless, watching the fear and suspicion move across her face. She could not tell whether he had just become the only man who could protect her, or the man who had arranged the threat himself. Evelyn turned the photograph over again, as if the threat might become less real if she read it twice. It did not. The glossy image showed her leaning into Luca beneath the amber lights of the velvet room, one hand on his shoulder, his palm resting at her waist. From that angle it looked intimate, deliberate, damning. It did not look like a dare. It looked like a secret between two people who had planned to meet. Who delivered this? Luca asked. His voice was calm, but the calm had changed. It was no longer the controlled stillness of a businessman. It was the silence of a predator deciding where to strike. The assistant shook his head. Courier left it with reception. Paid cash. No return address. Luca held out his hand. Evelyn did not give him the photograph. Did you send it? She asked. The assistant looked startled. Luca did not. His eyes remained fixed on hers. No, that answer came quickly. Because I do not need photographs to frighten people. The words should have made her feel worse. Instead, their bluntness felt more honest than reassurance would have. Luca took one step closer, lowering his voice. Who knew about the dare? Vanessa. The women at the table. Anyone who saw us. Anyone could have seen the kiss, Luca said. Not everyone could have taken that photograph. He pointed toward the background of the image. Look at the angle. Evelyn studied it. The camera had been positioned slightly above them, far enough to capture Luca's face clearly, while keeping Evelyn's body unobstructed. The private corridor, she murmured. Behind the booth. Luca nodded. That corridor is restricted. Staff, security, and invited guests only. A chill traveled down her arms. Vanessa was filming from the table. She may not have taken this picture, but she could have sent someone the video, or she was told where to seat you. Evelyn looked up sharply. Luca's expression was unreadable, but his attention had sharpened around her. You think the dare was planned? I think coincidence is a word people use when they have not yet found the person responsible. He reached for the photograph again. This time Evelyn handed it to him. His eyes moved across the image, and something hard appeared in his face when he saw Vanessa's blurred silhouette in the background holding up her phone. I want guards outside your apartment tonight. No. Luca looked at her. That was not a request. Then the answer is still no. His jaw tightened. Someone knows where you work. Someone knows what you discovered. Someone wants your signature on fraudulent statements. You are already involved. Being involved does not make me your property. I did not say it did. You decided where I would work without asking me. Now you are deciding who stands outside my home. You may call that protection. But from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like control. The office fell silent. Luca's assistant stared at the floor, clearly wishing he were somewhere else. Luca dismissed him with a glance. When the door closed, he moved toward Evelyn until only the desk separated them. You do not understand what happens when people threaten someone connected to me. I am not connected to you. His gaze dropped briefly to the photograph, then returned to her face. They believe you are. That is not the same thing. To men like this, it is the only thing that matters. Evelyn folded her arms. And what kind of man are you, Luca? It was the first time she had used his first name. Something shifted between them. The kind who knows what men like this do when fear stops working. Then tell me. His face hardened. They escalate. The words stayed between them. Evelyn felt fear move through her, but she refused to let him see it control her. You may give me a secure phone, she said. You may have someone monitor the building from the street. No one enters my apartment, follows me into a store, or decides where I go. Luca's eyes narrowed. He was not accustomed to negotiated obedience. You set terms in the middle of a threat? I set terms because there is a threat. For several seconds, neither moved. Then slowly, Luca nodded. One man across the street. He does not approach unless you call. Evelyn exhaled. Agreed. Luca opened a drawer, removed a small black phone, and placed it on the desk. One button reaches me directly. Not your security? Me. The answer came with a weight that unsettled her more than it should have. She picked up the phone. This does not mean I trust you. Trust is expensive, Luca said. I have not earned it yet. The admission surprised her. Men with less power than Luca had spent years demanding her trust simply because they claimed good intentions. He seemed to understand that intention was not proof. For the next several hours, Evelyn worked through account histories while Luca remained in and out of the office, taking calls, speaking with lawyers, and issuing quiet instructions. His presence filled the room even when he said nothing. She became increasingly aware of small contradictions in him. His employees feared disappointing him but did not appear afraid of being humiliated. He remembered the name of the janitor who brought fresh coffee. He thanked an assistant who corrected a scheduling error instead of punishing her for it. Yet when one of his men mentioned a missing shipment, Luca's expression became so cold that Evelyn understood how easily compassion could vanish when loyalty was involved. Near 8 that evening, a plate of grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and warm bread appeared beside her laptop. Evelyn looked up. Luca stood by the window, reading a message on his phone. I did not order this. You have not eaten since morning. You have been watching me? You are working in my office. That is not an answer. He looked at her. Yes. Evelyn pushed the plate away. I do not eat because a man orders me to. Then eat because your hands are shaking. She looked down. He was right. Exhaustion had begun to tremble through her fingers. The fact that he noticed irritated her because part of her was touched by it. I will eat, she said, after you answer one question honestly. Luca put the phone away. Ask, how much of this empire is legitimate? His expression did not change. More than it was 5 years ago. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give, without lying. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. $8 million disappeared through companies controlled by your family. Someone sent me a threat. Your name terrifies half this city. If I am expected to risk my career and possibly my life, I need to know whether I am helping an innocent man or simply a guilty one who lost control of his crimes. Luca walked toward the desk. He did not appear offended. If anything, he looked tired. I am not innocent. Evelyn waited. My father built this family through extortion, bribery, and fear, he continued. When I inherited it, I believed I could change the structure without creating a war. I shut down businesses I would not defend. I moved money into legitimate shipping, construction, and real estate. I also used violence against men who refused to let the old system die. His eyes remained on hers. I have done things you would hate me for. The honesty struck harder than denial would have. Did you authorize the hidden network? No. Did you know it existed? I suspected someone was resisting me. I did not know the scale. How many people were hurt while you suspected? A muscle moved in his jaw. Too many. Evelyn searched his face for manipulation and found none. Luca did not ask her to absolve him. He did not call himself misunderstood. He simply stood inside the ugliness of what he had done and refused to disguise it. That made him more dangerous, but strangely, also more human. Eat, he said at last. Then tell me where the money went. Evelyn pulled the plate closer. Do not mistake this for forgiveness. I would never insult you by asking for it so cheaply. She ate while reviewing the account trail. The transactions moved through a series of vendor invoices that appeared legitimate until she compared invoice numbers across subsidiaries. Several were duplicated. Others were approved during weekends when executive staff had no system access. The pattern led back toward an internal authorization server and, unexpectedly, toward Hale, Mercer, and Rowe. Evelyn's appetite vanished. She opened a secured archive connected to her firm's client portal. Her credentials allowed her to see prior audit notes, internal approvals, and partner correspondence. Richard's name appeared repeatedly. He had approved exceptions, waived verification requirements, and authorized Moretti documents without secondary review. Evelyn stared at the screen. The man who had taught her to distrust every unexplained number had been ignoring millions. She downloaded the files to an encrypted drive. Her phone rang before she could speak. Richard's name appeared on the screen. She answered on speaker. "Evelyn," he said, too warmly. "How is our client treating you?" Luca's attention shifted toward her, but he remained silent. "I found irregular transfers," Evelyn said. "Several were approved through our firm." A pause. "Every major account has irregularities. These were not irregularities. They were bypassed controls." Richard lowered his voice. "Do not become dramatic. Your authorization appears on multiple exceptions." Another pause, longer this time. "You are tired. Finish the preliminary report and return tomorrow. I will not sign anything until I complete the trace." The warmth disappeared from Richard's voice. "You will sign what the firm asks you to sign." Evelyn felt Luca go still across the room. "That is not how an independent audit works." Richard laughed softly. "Independent? Evelyn, you kissed the client in a nightclub before your first meeting. Do you honestly believe anyone will consider you independent now?" Her grip tightened around the phone. "How do you know about that? It does not matter." "It matters to me." "Then let me make this simple. Approve the statements, and the photograph disappears. Refuse. And by morning, every partner in Chicago will believe you traded access to your body for a promotion." Evelyn's face burned, not with shame, but with rage. "You assigned me to this account after seeing that photograph. I assigned you because you are reliable. You assigned me because you needed someone credible to take the fall." Richard's silence answered her. Luca began walking around the desk. Evelyn raised one hand, warning him not to interfere. "Who are you working for?" she asked. "Be careful," Richard said. "You are not as protected as you think." "I do not think I am protected." "Good. Then understand this. If you refuse to sign, your career is finished. Moretti goes down, you go down with him, and the firm will say you acted alone." The call ended. Evelyn remained still, staring at the dark screen. For 12 years, she had worked late, passed every exam, corrected other people's mistakes, and accepted twice the scrutiny for half the recognition. She had believed professionalism could protect her from prejudice, envy, and manipulation. Richard had just reduced all of it to a photograph and a lie. Luca reached for the phone. "Give me his address." "No. He threatened you. And you are not going to kill my managing partner." "I did not say kill. Your face did." For the first time, Luca looked almost offended. "You think I solve every problem with a body?" "I think men like Richard survive because powerful men keep teaching them that fear is stronger than evidence." Evelyn closed the laptop. "I will expose him. Legally. You may not live long enough to file the report. Then help me get evidence." Luca's expression darkened. "You are leaving this building with my security. We already agreed on the terms." "The terms changed." "No, the danger changed. My rights did not." "This is not a courtroom, Evelyn, and I am not one of your soldiers." The argument rose between them, sharp with fear neither wanted to name. Luca moved closer, his rough face tense with frustration. "You have no idea what they will do if they believe you can identify them." "Then tell me." "They will follow you. They will threaten people you love. They will create evidence that makes you look guilty. And when you are isolated, they will make you disappear." Evelyn held his gaze, though her heart had begun to pound. "So your solution is to remove my choices before they do. My solution is to keep you alive." By putting me in a guarded residence, I cannot leave? For one night. That is still a cage. Luca's eyes flashed. You would rather prove a point than survive. You would rather own the decision than admit you are afraid. The words struck him. His anger vanished so quickly it frightened her. Beneath it, she saw something raw. Yes, he said, I am afraid. Evelyn had not expected the confession. Luca stepped closer, lowering his voice. I have watched people become leverage because they stood too near me. I have buried men whose only mistake was loyalty. I will not let that happen to you because you are too proud to accept help. And I will not trade one threat for another just because yours comes with better intentions. She gathered her files. I am going home. Luca blocked the path to the elevator. No, Evelyn stopped in front of him. Move. Neither spoke. The attraction between them had not disappeared. It had become something harsher, tangled with anger, fear, and the memory of his hand at her waist. For one dangerous second, Evelyn wondered whether he would physically stop her. The thought hurt more than it frightened her. Do not make me regret believing there was a difference between you and the men using me, she said quietly. Luca's face changed. Slowly, he stepped aside. The elevator doors opened behind her. Evelyn entered without looking back. She pressed the lobby button. The doors began to close. Then the first bullet struck the glass wall of the penthouse. The sound was explosive. A spiderweb of cracks spread across the window. Luca moved before Evelyn understood what was happening. He lunged through the narrowing elevator doors, wrapped one arm around her, and drove them both to the marble floor as a second shot shattered the glass behind them. Evelyn heard men shouting, alarms screaming, and the violent spray of glass across the office. Luca covered her body with his own. His weight was solid and protective, his hand cradling the back of her head. A third shot struck the wall above them. Then Luca jerked. Evelyn felt warmth spread across her palm. You're hit, she gasped. Blood darkened his shirt near the shoulder. Stay down. His voice was rough but steady. His security rushed into the office, weapons drawn. One of them shouted that the shooter had fled to the adjacent rooftop. Luca tried to rise, but Evelyn caught his arm. Do not move. I have had worse. That is not medical advice. Despite the chaos, something almost like a smile touched his mouth. You are still arguing. You were shot because of me. The smile disappeared. No. I was shot because someone was afraid of what you found. As his men secured the room, Evelyn noticed a leather folder lying near the shattered window. It had not been there earlier. One of the attackers must have thrown or dropped it during the shooting. She crawled toward it before Luca could stop her. Inside was a handwritten ledger filled with coded names, transaction numbers, and payment dates. Evelyn scanned the pages. Her blood turned cold. Richard Hale's initials appeared beside several transfers. Vanessa Cole's full name appeared beside a payment marked Access and Recording. Farther down the page, a sequence of shell companies led to an account controlled by Vittorio Moretti, Luca's uncle. Evelyn looked at Luca. He had gone pale from blood loss, but the expression on his face was darker than pain. Vittorio raised me, he said quietly. Then he knew exactly how to destroy you, Evelyn replied. The truth assembled itself with brutal clarity. Vanessa had not dared her for entertainment. Richard had not assigned her because she was talented. She had been placed near Luca, photographed, threatened, and prepared as the perfect scapegoat. If the illegal accounts were discovered, Luca would look like the Mafia Boss who seduced his auditor. Evelyn would look like the woman who helped him hide the money. Vittorio would inherit what remained after both of them fell. Luca tried to stand. Evelyn pressed him back. You need a doctor. I need Vittorio. No. She closed the ledger and held it against her chest. You need evidence. If you move now, he will destroy everything and make us look guilty. He tried to kill you. And that is exactly why you cannot think clearly. Luca stared at her, breathing hard through the pain. You still do not trust me. Evelyn looked at the blood on her hands, the shattered glass, and the man who had ignored her boundaries but thrown his body over hers without hesitation. I trust that you saved my life, she said. I do not yet know whether that means I should give you control of it. His gaze held hers. She could see the answer wounded him. but he did not argue. Evelyn opened the ledger again. "I will help you expose Richard, Vanessa, and your uncle. But from this moment on, we do it my way. No executions, no disappearances, no decisions about my life without me." Luca's jaw tightened. "You are negotiating while I am bleeding. You are less intimidating when you are bleeding." A rough breath escaped him, almost a laugh. "And if I refuse?" Evelyn met his eyes. "Then I walk into the nearest federal office with this ledger, and let them decide which Moretti goes to prison." The room became still. Luca studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Your way." Evelyn knew better than to mistake agreement for safety. Luca had tried to control her, yet he had also taken a bullet to protect her. He was guilty of terrible things, yet someone he trusted was using his name to commit worse ones. She now had enough evidence to destroy him, enough fear to run, and just enough faith to stay. If you were in Evelyn's place, would you trust Luca long enough to expose the real traitor, or would you walk away before his dangerous world destroyed everything you had built? By dawn, the storm had moved east over Lake Michigan, but the darkness inside Luca Moretti's penthouse had only deepened. A private physician stitched the bullet wound in Luca's shoulder while Evelyn sat across the room with the ledger open on her knees, tracing every coded payment as if concentration alone could keep fear from taking root. The office smelled of antiseptic, smoke, and rain-soaked glass. Men moved quietly through the shattered space, replacing security feeds, checking rooftops, and speaking into encrypted radios. No one asked Evelyn to leave. More importantly, no one tried to take the ledger from her. Luca had honored the first condition of their agreement, though she could feel how much it cost him. He sat shirtless beneath the physician's hands, his broad chest marked by old scars she had not expected to see. Some were thin and pale, others were jagged, badly healed, reminders of violence that had reached him long before he became powerful enough to command it. Evelyn forced her attention back to the numbers. Sympathy could become dangerous when it arrived before trust. "The bullet passed through cleanly," the physician said. "No major artery. You need rest, antibiotics, and no unnecessary movement." Luca glanced toward Evelyn. "Define unnecessary." The physician followed his gaze, sighed, and began packing his instruments. "Anything involving revenge before breakfast." Evelyn almost smiled, but the weight of the ledger killed the impulse. When the physician left, Luca pulled on a black shirt with one hand, refusing assistance from the men around him. His movements were slower than usual, but his face revealed nothing. "What have you found?" he asked. Evelyn spread several copied pages across the desk. "The ledger is not a record of completed payments. It is a coordination log. Each code identifies a person, a task, and a release date." She tapped one line. "Richard received $200,000 3 months ago. Another payment was scheduled after I signed the audit." Luca's expression hardened. "And Vanessa? $50,000 for access, recording, and placement." Evelyn hated how clinical the words looked on paper. Vanessa had sold years of friendship for less than Evelyn's annual salary. "She was paid to get me near you, create evidence of a personal relationship, and make sure I looked compromised before the audit began." "She did more than accept money," Luca said. "She chose the wound she knew would make you act." Evelyn looked up. "Meaning?" "She knew what to say to make you cross that room." The truth was sharp because it was precise. Vanessa had not merely mocked her appearance. She had weaponized years of private conversations, old insecurities, and the confidence Evelyn had worked hard to build. "That does not absolve me," Evelyn said. "I made the decision to kiss you." "I know." Luca's voice softened. "That is why they chose a dare instead of force. They needed your decision to look voluntary." Evelyn turned another page. "Vittorio's code appears beside every major transfer. He was not hiding individual crimes. He was building a second empire inside yours, using my accounts, my authority, and my enemies," Luca said. "When the federal case opened, I would take the blame. He would step forward as the respectable uncle who tried to save the family, and I would be the auditor who made the numbers clean." Evelyn closed the ledger. "We need proof that survives beyond this book. Richard will claim it is forged. Vittorio will say it was planted during the attack. Luca walked toward the window and stared at the city below. My men can bring them both here. No. You have rejected violence 3 times in one night, because violence would give us frightened men and dead evidence. Evelyn stood and carried the ledger to the desk. We need them to reveal themselves. Luca turned. How? With information they cannot resist. His gaze sharpened. Evelyn began explaining. She would create 4 versions of a false acquisition ledger, each nearly identical but containing one unique routing code buried inside the transfer schedule. One version would go to Richard, one to Vanessa, one to Vittorio, the 4th to a trusted Moretti lieutenant chosen by Luca. The document would claim Luca intended to move control of the family's legitimate port holdings into an independent trust. If Vittorio truly depended on those assets to finance his hidden network, he would act immediately. Whichever version appears outside its assigned channel identifies the leak, Evelyn said. If the FBI receives Vittorio's code, we know he is feeding them information. If the false transfer reaches one of the shell companies, we trace where it goes. Luca studied her with an intensity that made the room seem smaller. You designed this while I was being stitched. I design traps better when I'm angry. Remind me never to betray you. Evelyn met his eyes. You should not need a reminder. Something passed across his face, admiration, regret, perhaps both. Who is the trusted lieutenant? She asked. Luca hesitated. Marco Bellini. How long has he been with you? 15 years. Do you trust him completely? Yes. Then he gets a version too. Luca's mouth tightened. You think everyone should be tested? Especially the people we believe cannot betray us. The words struck too close to Vittorio. Luca looked away first. By mid-morning, Evelyn had built the 4 files on an isolated laptop disconnected from the Moretti network. She varied only a single bank suffix in each version, then embedded a hidden digital beacon that would activate if the file was opened on an unauthorized server. Luca watched from the opposite side of the desk, his injured arm secured in a sling he clearly despised. Their partnership developed in the uneasy space between distrust and dependence. He answered every question, even the ones that exposed past crimes. Evelyn challenged every assumption, even when his men shifted uncomfortably at her tone. At one point, Luca told a lieutenant to send armed escorts with her to meet Vanessa. Evelyn stopped typing. What did we agree? Luca exhaled through his nose. That I do not decide your movements. Correct. Then I strongly recommend 2 armed escorts. 1 driver. He stays in the car. 2. 1. Heavily armed. Evelyn looked at him. You negotiate like a child. I have been called worse. 1 driver, 1 tracker in my purse, and you do not enter unless I call. Luca considered it. Agreed. The small concession mattered more than either acknowledged. He was learning to ask. She was learning that accepting protection did not automatically mean surrendering control. Evelyn contacted Vanessa from a secure phone and asked to meet at a quiet cafe near Lincoln Park. Vanessa answered on the 4th ring, breathing too quickly. Evelyn, I've been trying to reach you. No, you haven't. Silence. I know about the payment, Evelyn continued. I know what the dare was for. Vanessa began crying immediately. The sound was so familiar that Evelyn almost responded from habit. For years, she had been the one Vanessa called after failed relationships, family arguments, and nights when admiration from strangers could not fill whatever emptiness she carried home. Please let me explain, Vanessa whispered. Then meet me in 30 minutes. The cafe was nearly empty when Evelyn arrived. Vanessa sat in a rear booth wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream coat despite the warmth inside. Her hands shook around a cup she had not touched. Evelyn sat opposite her but did not remove her own coat. She wanted no suggestion that this was a reconciliation. How much? She asked. Vanessa lowered her sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen. Evelyn, how much did they pay you to turn my birthday into evidence? Vanessa looked down. 50,000. The number hurt even though Evelyn already knew it. Was our friendship included? Or did you throw that in for free? I did not know they were going to hurt you. You gave them my schedule. They said they needed to know when you would meet the client. You filmed me. They told me it was leverage, not a weapon. Evelyn leaned forward. Leverage is a weapon. Vanessa's mouth trembled. I was in debt. So was Richard. Apparently, betrayal has become a financial strategy. You do not understand what it was like. Then explain it. Vanessa removed the sunglasses completely. Beneath the fear was something uglier and more honest. You always walked into rooms like you had nothing to prove. Evelyn almost laughed. You spent years telling me I had everything to prove. Exactly. Vanessa's voice sharpened. People underestimated you, and somehow you turned it into strength. You built a career. You bought your own apartment. You never needed anyone to invite you into important rooms. I had every advantage, and I still felt like the decorative one beside you. Evelyn stared at her. So you decided to destroy me. I wanted one thing that made me feel important. Vittorio gave you a role. Vanessa nodded, tears falling again. He said it was just a corporate pressure campaign. He said Luca was dangerous and that no one innocent would be affected. And you believed a Moretti family advisor was paying you $50,000 for a harmless prank? Vanessa covered her face. I wanted to believe it. Evelyn's anger cooled into something heavier than rage. No, you wanted the money. And you wanted me brought down to a level where you felt taller. Vanessa flinched. I'm sorry. Sorry is what people say when they break a glass. You handed strangers the most vulnerable parts of my life and watched them build a trap. Vanessa looked toward the door, panic returning. They know I called you. Who? Vittorio. He is planning something at the Moretti Foundation Gala tonight. He wants the photograph released publicly. Richard will accuse you of manipulating the audit because of your relationship with Luca. Federal agents will already be there. What agents? I don't know. Vittorio said he has someone inside the investigation. Evelyn felt the entire conspiracy tightening. Give me proof. Vanessa reached into her purse and removed a small audio recorder. Before she could place it on the table, the cafe lights went out. The front door slammed open. 2 men entered wearing maintenance uniforms, but their movements were too coordinated, too deliberate. Evelyn reached for the emergency phone in her pocket. One man grabbed Vanessa from behind. The other overturned the table between Evelyn and the aisle. Coffee and broken glass scattered across the floor. Vanessa screamed Evelyn's name. Evelyn struck the emergency button as Luca's driver rushed in from outside, but the first man sprayed something into his face and drove an elbow into his throat. Evelyn lunged for Vanessa's hand. Their fingers touched for one desperate second. Then the second attacker pulled Vanessa backward through the service door. I'm sorry, Vanessa screamed. The recording is in. The door slammed shut before she finished. Evelyn ran after them, but a black SUV was already tearing away through the alley. The driver staggered outside, coughing and half-blind. Evelyn called Luca. He answered before the first ring completed. Where are you? They took Vanessa. Luca's voice became lethal. Are you hurt? No. Stay inside. She had an audio recording. I said stay inside. And I said we do this my way. Evelyn. Find the SUV. I'm checking what she left. She returned to the booth and searched beneath the spilled coffee, broken dishes, and Vanessa's abandoned purse. The small recorder was gone. Then Evelyn remembered Vanessa's unfinished sentence. The recording is in. She opened the purse lining and felt something hard beneath the fabric. A memory card had been sewn into the inner seam. Evelyn removed it with a butter knife from the table. I found it, she told Luca. There was a brief silence. You are either the bravest woman I have met or the most determined to shorten my life. Send someone you trust. Marco is 2 minutes away. Evelyn looked through the window at the street. Every passing car suddenly suspicious. Luca, Vittorio plans to expose us at the gala tonight. He has someone inside the federal investigation. Then you are not going to that gala. That is where he expects to win. It is also where he can put a bullet through your heart, in front of 500 witnesses. Not if we control what he believes. When Evelyn returned to the penthouse, Luca was waiting near the elevator, pale with anger and pain. You disobeyed a direct instruction. She walked past him. We have already established that I do not work for you. You nearly got taken. But I did not, and now we have this. She held up the memory card. Luca closed his eyes briefly, struggling against words that would undo the fragile progress between them. I do not know how to protect you without trying to control you, he admitted. Evelyn stopped. It was not an apology, but it was more vulnerable than one. Then start by telling me the truth before you make choices for me. The truth is that every instinct I have says to lock every door and put 20 armed men around you. And what does your judgment say? Luca looked at her for a long moment. That you would hate me before sunset. Good. Your judgment is improving. Marco delivered the 4 false ledgers. Richard received his through the firm's encrypted portal. Vanessa's version was sent to a dormant email account Vittorio's people still monitored. Marco took 1 copy personally. Vittorio received his through a family attorney who believed it was a legitimate board document. Then they waited. During those hours, Luca's senior advisors gathered in the penthouse conference room. Evelyn listened from the hall as they argued that the easiest solution was to let the evidence point toward her. The photograph already establishes intimacy, one advisor said. Her signature completes the story. The federal government gets its corrupt auditor. The family survives. Another voice answered, She is not family. Luca remained silent long enough for dread to enter Evelyn's chest. She had known this possibility from the beginning, but hearing men discuss the destruction of her life as a practical business option made it brutally real. She opened her laptop and prepared an encrypted package containing the ledger, Richard's records, and every file she had collected. 1 keystroke would send it to a federal public corruption unit outside Chicago. Then Luca spoke. Dissolve the offshore network. The room went silent. Transfer the legitimate port holdings into an independent employee trust, he continued. Freeze every account connected to the old structure. Surrender the illegal funds through counsel. His advisors erupted. One warned that the family would lose hundreds of millions. Another said rival organizations would interpret the move as weakness. A third insisted the empire could not survive. Luca's voice cut through them. Then let it burn. No one spoke. I built this empire because I believed power could keep people safe, Luca said. If protecting it requires destroying her, then it deserves to burn. Evelyn stood outside the room, unable to move. He did not know she was listening. This was not a performance designed to win her trust. He was choosing to dismantle the very thing that defined him because he refused to use her as a shield. For the first time, she understood that Luca's feelings had moved beyond fascination and possession. He was willing to lose his throne rather than bury her beneath it. Evelyn entered the conference room. Every man turned toward her. Luca's face changed when he saw her. You heard. Enough. She set the laptop on the table. You are not surrendering everything yet. I will not gamble with your life. Then stop treating me like the stake. She turned the screen toward him. A red notification pulsed beside one of the digital beacons. The trap activated. Luca leaned closer. Which version? Evelyn opened the trace. The file assigned to Vittorio had been accessed from a secure federal evidence server 37 minutes earlier. Your uncle is leaking documents directly into the investigation, she said. And the agent receiving them is not following normal evidence procedures. Another alert appeared. The same file had been copied to a private device registered to Richard Hale. Vittorio, Richard, and the corrupt federal contact were all connected. We have the leak, Luca said. Not enough, Evelyn replied. We need the original authorization chain, Vanessa's testimony, and the audio recording. Marco entered the room, his face grim. We found the SUV abandoned near Lower Wacker. No sign of the woman. Luca reached for his jacket. Evelyn stepped into his path. No private war. They have Vanessa. And they want you angry enough to act without evidence. She betrayed you. Yes. Evelyn's voice tightened. But I will not let Vittorio murder her so that vengeance becomes convenient. Luca searched her face, perhaps trying to understand why she would risk herself for someone who had sold her. You still care about her. I care about who I become next. Marco placed a tablet on the table. Security footage showed a vehicle entering an abandoned Moretti warehouse near the river. They had less than 90 minutes before the gala. Luca's men moved to rescue Vanessa, while Evelyn listened to the audio files recovered from the memory card. Vittorio's voice came through clearly, discussing the staged dare, Richard's payment, and the need to place Evelyn's signature on the final report. Then another voice warned that Luca might choose the woman over the family. Vittorio laughed. Then we show Chicago what she is, and we make him choose in public. Evelyn removed the headphones. He thinks humiliation will break me. Luca stood behind her, dressed in a fresh black suit that concealed the bandage beneath his shirt. He does not know you. Evelyn looked toward the garment bag waiting near the door. Inside was the deep emerald gown Luca's assistant had arranged for the gala. She had initially refused to attend. Now the ballroom was the only place where the conspirators, federal agents, press, and original evidence would be gathered together. He wants us to arrive as lovers, she said. Then we give him the opposite. Luca understood immediately. We enter separately. You appear willing to cooperate with the investigation, and you appear ready to sacrifice me to save your company. The idea repulsed him. No, it is the only story Vittorio will believe. I will not let you stand alone in that room. You will be 20 feet away. That is too far. Evelyn's expression softened despite herself. Then learn to trust me from 20 feet. 2 hours later, the Moretti Foundation Gala glittered beneath the vaulted ceiling of a historic lakeside hotel. Politicians, judges, business leaders, donors, and reporters filled the ballroom beneath crystal chandeliers. Evelyn entered alone in the emerald gown, her auburn hair falling over one shoulder, her full figure elegant and commanding beneath the silk. Conversations quieted as she passed. Some guests recognized her from whispered rumors already moving through the room. Others simply stared because she refused to lower her eyes. Luca entered several minutes later through the opposite doors, dark, rugged, and visibly distant. He did not approach her. To anyone watching, they looked like two people whose dangerous alliance had already collapsed. Across the ballroom, Vittorio Moretti smiled. He was silver-haired, impeccably dressed, and warm-faced in the manner of men who had spent decades convincing others that cruelty was wisdom. Richard stood beside him, sweating through his collar. Near the stage, two federal agents watched Evelyn with professional interest. One of them was the man connected to the unauthorized evidence server. Evelyn touched the tracker hidden beneath her bracelet. Marco's voice whispered through the tiny earpiece. Vanessa is alive. We have her. She is on her way. Relief moved through Evelyn, followed immediately by fear. Vittorio stepped onto the stage before Vanessa arrived. He raised one hand, and the orchestra fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice warm enough to disguise the blade beneath it. "I had hoped tonight would celebrate the future of the Moretti Foundation. Unfortunately, integrity requires that we address a betrayal within our own house." The ballroom doors locked. Federal agents moved closer to the stage. Behind Vittorio, the enormous presentation screen flickered to life. The photograph from the Velvet Room appeared 20 feet high. Evelyn kissing Luca, his hand at her waist, her body pressed close to his. A shocked murmur rolled through the crowd. Richard stepped forward and raised a folder filled with fabricated audit records. "We have evidence," Vittorio announced, "that Evelyn Hart used an intimate relationship with Luca Moretti to conceal the theft of millions from this company." Every camera turned toward her. Every whispered insult Vanessa had ever delivered seemed to rise in the room at once. The reckless woman, the desperate woman, the chubby auditor who had traded her body for access. Vittorio expected shame to make her smaller. Instead, Evelyn lifted her chin, handed her champagne glass to a passing waiter, and began walking toward the stage. Evelyn climbed the steps without hurrying. The ballroom seemed to expand around her, every chandelier brighter, every whisper sharper, every camera lens waiting for her to break. Vittorio watched her approach with the patient confidence of a man who believed humiliation was inevitable once enough people were invited to witness it. Richard would not meet her eyes. Luca stood near the far edge of the ballroom, 20 feet away as promised, his face unreadable except for the tension in his jaw. Evelyn could feel his restraint like a physical force. He wanted to cross the room. He wanted to pull her behind him, silence every voice, and end the danger in the only language his world had taught him. Instead, he stayed where she had asked him to stay. That mattered. When Evelyn reached the stage, Vittorio offered her a microphone with false courtesy. "Miss Hart," he said, "perhaps you would like to explain how an independent auditor found herself in such an intimate position with the man whose books she was reviewing." A few nervous laughs moved through the room. Evelyn took the microphone and turned toward the enormous photograph behind her. For one instant, she saw herself through the eyes of the crowd, a chubby woman in a sapphire dress, pressed against a feared man, exposed in a moment no one understood. Months ago, perhaps even days ago, the image might have made her want to disappear. Now she saw something else. She saw a choice she had made, reckless but hers. She faced the audience. "Yes," she said clearly, "I kissed Luca Moretti." The murmurs grew louder. Vittorio smiled. Evelyn continued. "It happened before I knew he would become my client. It was impulsive, personal, and possibly the worst birthday decision I have ever made." A few people laughed, this time with her rather than at her. But it was not a financial crime. It was not a bribe. And it was not permission for anyone in this room to decide what kind of woman I am. The laughter stopped. Evelyn looked toward Richard. "What happened after that kiss is the reason we are all here." Vittorio stepped closer. "You are attempting to distract from documented fraud." "No," Evelyn said. "I am separating embarrassment from evidence. You have spent months hoping everyone would confuse the two." She removed a slim drive from the bracelet at her wrist and inserted it into the presentation system. The photograph vanished. 4 financial documents appeared side by side. These are 4 versions of the same false acquisition ledger. Each version contains a different routing suffix and an embedded access marker. One was sent to Richard Hale, one was placed where Vanessa Cole's handlers could find it, one was given to a trusted Moretti lieutenant, and one was sent exclusively to Vittorio Moretti. Vittorio's smile faded slightly. Evelyn enlarged the final document. A red code glowed near the bottom of the screen. At 3:17 this afternoon, Vittorio's version was opened on a restricted federal evidence server. 9 minutes later, it was copied to Richard Hale's private device. The corrupt agent near the stage shifted toward the exit. Marco stepped into his path with 2 attorneys and a uniformed federal supervisor behind him. The agent froze. Evelyn continued before the room could absorb the first revelation. No warrant had been issued for that document. No official evidence intake had been recorded, which means someone inside the investigation was receiving manufactured evidence directly from Mr. Moretti. Richard's face went white. "This is absurd," Vittorio said. "Digital codes can be fabricated." "Of course they can," Evelyn replied. "That is why I brought more than digital codes." The ballroom doors opened. Vanessa entered between 2 members of Luca's security team and a federal prosecutor Evelyn had contacted through outside counsel. Her silver dress was torn at the shoulder, and bruises darkened one side of her face. Every trace of her former polish had been replaced by fear and exhaustion. Evelyn felt the old hurt rise again, but she did not look away. Vanessa walked toward the stage, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Vittorio stared at her as though he had seen a ghost. "She is lying," he said. "She is a frightened socialite who will say anything to avoid prosecution." Vanessa stopped below the stage. "I was paid $50,000 to arrange the dare, record the kiss, and give Richard Evelyn's schedule," she said. Her voice shook, but it did not break. "Vittorio told me the photograph would be used to pressure her into signing the audit. When I tried to give Evelyn proof, his men took me from a cafe and held me in a warehouse." She raised the evidence bag. Inside was the original memory card. "This contains recordings of every instruction he gave me." Richard backed away from Vittorio. "You said there would be no witnesses." The words left his mouth before he understood what he had admitted. Every camera turned toward him. Vittorio's face hardened. "Be quiet." Richard's panic broke whatever loyalty fear had purchased. "He paid me," he shouted. "He paid the firm through consulting shells. He told me to assign Evelyn because her record was clean. He said if she found the transfers, Luca would either silence her or the government would blame her. I never authorized the attack." "But you authorized the false audit exceptions," Evelyn said. "You threatened my career. You planned to place my signature on transactions you knew were criminal. Richard looked at her with the desperate expression of a man discovering that respectability was a costume no longer hiding him. I had debts. So did Vanessa, Evelyn replied. Debt explains fear. It does not erase choice. The federal supervisor ordered Richard, and the corrupt agent detained. Vittorio moved suddenly, shoving past the edge of the stage and disappearing through a service corridor. Luca reacted at once. He crossed the ballroom with Marco close behind. Evelyn followed despite the prosecutor calling after her. She found them in a narrow corridor behind the kitchens, where the music and voices from the ballroom became distant and unreal. Vittorio stood near an emergency exit with a pistol in his hand. Luca faced him from several yards away, his injured arm held stiffly at his side. You destroyed this family for a woman, Vittorio said. His calm, public voice was gone. I tried to save it from you, Luca replied. Vittorio laughed bitterly. Your father knew what this name required. Fear, blood, obedience. You spent 5 years apologizing for the power he left you. I spent 5 years trying to keep men like you from using it. And now you will surrender everything because she looked at you like you were worth saving. Luca's expression darkened. She never said I was. Vittorio raised the weapon. Marco reached for his own, but Luca lifted one hand, stopping him. Put it down, Luca said. You do not command me anymore. Vittorio's gaze shifted to Evelyn as she entered the corridor. There she is, the woman who convinced you to become weak. Luca took one step forward. Do not look at her. Why? Because she might finally see what you are. Vittorio smiled. Kill me, Luca. Show her the man beneath the suit. Show her that a Moretti does not beg courts for justice. Luca drew his weapon. The movement was fast and smooth. Vittorio's smile widened because this was the ending he understood. Evelyn's heart pounded, but she did not plead. She did not tell Luca that love could redeem him, or that one good decision would erase everything he had done. She stepped closer and said, Whatever you do next is the man you will have to live with after I am gone. Luca looked at her. The words struck him more deeply than any command could have. Evelyn held his gaze. I will not choose for you, and I will not stay just to make the choice easier. The corridor became completely still. Vittorio tightened his grip on the pistol. Luca could kill him. Everyone there knew it. It would be fast, satisfying, and familiar. Slowly, Luca lowered his weapon. I am done building my future out of graves, he said. Vittorio's face twisted with rage. He swung the gun toward Evelyn. Marco fired first. The bullet struck Vittorio's hand, sending the pistol skidding across the floor. Federal agents rushed into the corridor and forced him to his knees. As they placed him in handcuffs, Vittorio looked up at Luca with hatred and disbelief. You let them take your family. Luca glanced toward Evelyn. No. I finally stopped confusing family with ownership. The legal consequences unfolded over the following months with none of the glamour of the gala. There were hearings, depositions, sealed agreements, and long days in offices where every word carried a price. Luca surrendered records connecting Vittorio's network to corrupt officials, illegal payments, and violent operations. He forfeited the offshore assets and stepped away from direct control of Moretti Continental Logistics, while the legitimate company was restructured under an independent board. The employee trust Evelyn designed preserved thousands of jobs but stripped the Moretti family of the power Vittorio had tried to protect. Luca avoided the sentence Vittorio had planned for him, but he did not escape consequence. He lost most of his fortune, several properties, and the empire that had once made entire rooms fall silent when he entered. Richard Hale lost his partnership, pension, and professional license. He later accepted a federal plea agreement that included prison time. The corrupt agent was charged with evidence tampering and conspiracy. Vanessa cooperated fully and received a reduced sentence. Before she entered court, she asked to see Evelyn one final time. They met in a quiet conference room with their attorneys outside. Vanessa looked smaller without the armor of expensive clothes and effortless charm. I know you will never forgive me, she said. Evelyn considered the words. Forgiveness is not the same as letting someone return. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I did love you. I believe part of you did. Evelyn's voice remained gentle. But love that needs another person to become smaller is not safe enough to keep. They said goodbye without embracing. Evelyn left with grief, but not regret. Hale, Mercer, and Rowe offered her a partnership in an attempt to repair the firm's reputation. She declined. Instead, she opened Hart Forensic Advisory in a modest office overlooking the Chicago River. Her practice specialized in whistleblower protection, corporate fraud, and employees who had been selected as convenient scapegoats by powerful institutions. For the first time in her career, she did not need permission to enter the room. She owned the name on the door. Luca did not visit during the first 3 months. He sent no gifts, no guards, and no messages disguised as business. Evelyn understood what the silence meant. He was respecting the space she had asked for, even though every instinct in him must have demanded the opposite. One rainy afternoon, her receptionist informed her that a man named Luca Moretti was waiting without an appointment. Evelyn found him standing near the window in a dark coat. He was still tall, rugged, and dangerously handsome, but the polished armor around him had changed. There were no bodyguards outside her office, no convoy waiting below, no empire pressing into the room behind him. "You could have called," she said. "You might have said no. I still might." Luca nodded. "I know." She closed the door. "Why are you here?" He looked toward the city before answering. "I spent most of my life taking control before anyone could leave me. I told myself it was protection because that sounded better than fear." Evelyn remained silent. "I cannot promise I will stop wanting to protect you," he continued, "but I can promise I will ask before I decide what protection looks like." His eyes met hers. "I will never claim you, Evelyn. I know better now. But if there is still a place in your life for a man who is learning how to ask instead of take, I want it." She felt the old attraction rise between them, but it was different now. It was no longer tangled with a dare, a threat, or a debt. "What exactly are you asking for?" she said. Luca stepped closer but stopped before entering her space. "One honest chance. No threats, no obligations, no empire between us." Evelyn studied the man who had once believed love meant standing between her and every exit. Now he waited several feet away and gave her the freedom to close the distance or send him home. "The first kiss was a dare," she said. "I remember. What do you think the second one should be?" His voice dropped. "I was hoping it might be your decision." Evelyn walked toward him. She placed one hand against the rough line of his jaw and felt him go completely still beneath her touch. "It is," she whispered. Then she kissed him first. The kiss was slower than the one at the Velvet Room, but more powerful because neither of them was running from anything. Luca touched her waist only after she moved closer. He held her with strength, not ownership, and when they separated, he did not ask who she belonged to. He simply rested his forehead against hers and waited for her to remain. Evelyn once believed power meant never allowing anyone to see her afraid. Luca believed power meant controlling everything he could not afford to lose. In the end, they learned that real strength was neither hiding your heart nor holding another person too tightly. It was telling the truth, accepting the consequences, and giving the people you love the freedom to choose you. A person who truly values you will never require you to become smaller, quieter, or less honest in order to stay beside them. What would you have done in Evelyn's position? Would you have trusted Luca after discovering the secret ledger, or would his past have been impossible to forgive? Share your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional Mafia Boss stories where strong, underestimated, women do more than capture a powerful man's attention. They change the choices he makes. Subscribe to the channel for the next story.